I never give up on anyone, but a lot of people give up on themselves.
Your ability to not give up on anyone, where does that come from?
But I'm pretty clear on the end point. I wouldn't have selected it in the first place if I didn't think they were capable of doing it. 4.5 minutes is as long as someone will be patient with you before they click next. Can't afford to be boring in that window.
If you can do it on an email or on a website, you're not worthy of a TED stage.
Yeah. If they can't articulate that idea in a single compelling sentence, it's not clear in their head. Challenge with that is if it's not clear in your head, it can't be clear in the audience's head. In other words, it doesn't mean something if they don't trust you, if they don't believe you, if you haven't built trust and rapport. It doesn't matter how good the idea is.
It won't fly. Jonya, welcome to the Speaker Driven Business Podcast. I am so happy to have you with us in this conversation today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. We've been discussing this for a little while and we finally got there.
Yeah, discussions, false starts, but we're all on track and we're ready to roll.
We're determined.
So, John, actually, one of the reasons I reached out to you, number one, you're a good human, but also you're really well known in certain spaces for your work with TEDx Melbourne. And that's been quite a journey. And all journeys start somewhere. So I'd love to get an idea and a sense of how that journey started and what was the catalyst for moving in this direction.
Sure. Was this my personal journey or the TEDx journey?
Probably both. Like, let's weave them.
All right. I'll go back to the origin story. I'm not naturally a good communicator. I'm an introvert. If you do any of those psychographic profiles, I'm not an introvert. I'm like off the scale over there, introvert.
Why do you think I like podcasting? Totally introvert.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I'm shy in nature. And then I also, there is a cultural overlay around speaking up against people that are more senior for you. And I was a very, very junior IT person back in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Trying to convince a CEO that Y2K was actually a thing. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't get necessarily an invitation to a meeting, but he had to walk past my cubicle on the way to his office. And so I got really good at these short sound bites at a level he could understand that got his attention. And so over that time, ended up living in London, had to take traders' machines for at least 45 minutes. The problem being that for every...
hang on a minute, on a stockbroking trading floor?
Yes.
Okay, so 45 minutes is like slitting their wrists.
Yeah, every 15 minutes they didn't have their machine, they were losing £1 million.
Okay.
So it was
glad I didn't have your job.
Yeah, it was cheaper for them to sack me than to spend another 15 minutes trying to solve their computer problem. So I got really good. And these were not standard machines. Like, these were bespoke, customized machines. That was one computer. The Excel spreadsheet, just the Excel spreadsheet on a server class machine on his desk took 20 minutes to save. That's how complicated it was.
Wow. Okay. So serious IT
these were
work.
Very, very complicated machines. Probably trying to do more than they were really designed for. But I mean, when you're trying to find an edge in that game, money's no object, right?
Yeah.
So again, how do you get someone's attention? How do you keep their attention? How do you let them realize the significance of what, is about to come? So sort of cut my teeth in there. And then I was lucky enough in about 2009, to be part of the TEDx Melbourne community. Mm-hmm. And
so you're obviously back from London.
I was back from London at this point. And the previous organizer had to decide whether she was going to organize the next TEDx Melbourne or her wedding.
Okay, big decision.
So it kind of landed on my lap. But one of the benefits of that is I could see all the TED Talk data. Back then, you could see all the raw data for all the videos. And so I could see when someone would pause, rewind, or abandon a video.
Wow. Okay. So that would have got your attention because of your background, analysis, IT, programming. It would have immediately got your attention, I'm assuming.
Exactly. So, rewound at 30 seconds, worked out what they did or said. Mm-hmm. And then built statistical models for influence.
Statistical models? Sorry, but you just broke my brain. You built statistical models for influence. So this was based on what you were seeing happening on these videos?
Yes.
Can I just ask a question? What
Yeah.
possessed you to create a statistical model for what you were seeing?
Look, mostly because I'm a colossal nerd, but I was genuinely interested for my own benefit because I still didn't feel I had a handle. I had this school of hard knocks. I had this instinct, but I couldn't justify why it was correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You
so
didn't have the
I had
frameworks
to
and
find out why.
yeah.
And I've always been, that's my brain anyway. Like I'm always trying to understand why something happens. I
Yeah.
actually did organizational behavior when I did a business degree, because I was genuinely interested in what caused someone to do something.
Yeah.
And so organizational behavior was kind of the nearest thing to that. And so this was really in that domain, but
Yeah.
specifically around speaking and influence and communication.
So when you built this model, tell me about this model because you did just break my brain. Tell me
Yeah.
about the model and what you built and what it gave you.
So I've now learned since then that I was exploring what's called first principles, which is what are the elements that cause something to work, but if you actually removed even one of them, the whole
It
thing's
fails.
broken.
Yeah.
So, the analogy I like to use today is if you think about a car, if I go think about a car, and you probably think Ferrari, you might think Toyota, you might think something in between, and you kind of go, well, what makes them all interesting or relevant or common? Most people put them into generalized categories, utes or four-wheel drives or sports cars. But when I think about it, I think about brake, accelerator, steering wheel, four wheels, and a drive unit. And so whether you've got a Ferrari or a Toyota, they all have those five things.
Yeah.
If one of those things doesn't work, the car doesn't work.
Yeah.
So how do you break your idea down so it's so simple that anyone will understand how you got there, and then with a little bit of common sense, work out, well, then if you could reconstruct yourself in your world, what does that mean to them?
Mm.
And so communication is very much about how you create meaning, not how you transfer information. Because we have the internet to transfer information, email,
Absolutely.
websites and whatnot. It's about the meaning we create in that communication that became interesting to me. And I kind of discovered, there's a human side to this. And this is kind of my OCD kind of introverted self going, but there's a logical way to create sense for people.
I love that. So this was as you're taking over, you hadn't made a decision yet, you were considering the opportunity. Like, where did this fall?
I was probably at that point about, I'm going to say at least a year in,
Yeah.
where I had people who I was accepting on my stage, and they said, well, and most of these people, a great many of them are not professional speakers. They're just people who've got an idea. Some of them never spoken in their lives. And so it was really kind of along the lines of, well, what do you reckon I should do? Or what's your advice here? And I'd kind of say, try this or try that. And I'd realized that I was going from that instinct, but I wasn't really able to justify it. So some people would take that advice, some people wouldn't. But when I had the statistical model, and they said, I'm going to do this, I go, you can do that. There's a 50% chance that won't work. The choice is up to you, but this is the way that I've seen it work. And so we're able to identify that. And because I could control the event, I could control the speaker, I could control the stage, I can control as many variables as I could. The only thing that I could then measure at the end was the outcome, which TED is compulsory rule around what's called a net promoter score.
Yep, the NPS, yeah.
So hopefully your audience knows what net promoter score is. You can Google that if you want. But effectively, we were able to get most people are happy with 0. 20 is generally pretty good. We were at 55, and then we were able to almost overnight bring it into the high 90s.
So this bit fascinates me because whilst I'm laughing at your introverted, nerdy OCD brain, I also love data and I love measurement. So because I really, really love this improvement that you made, and we're going to really unpack some of that today. Was it being able to control all those elements and actually have a predictable, sustainable, almost repeatable approach and process? Was that what really made the difference?
Well, again, in my optimizing brain, because that's what I did in IT, always said, well, what else could we do? What else would I need to know? What are the variables I'm playing with? Again, coming back to the first principles, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that I could really focus on that have given us the biggest bang for buck? And I would just focus on that. And eventually I was able to narrow down the variables and also control the scope of those variables. And yes, TED gave me the ultimate end-to-end solution in there. It became a sandbox for me.
Yeah. So when you said, like zero in on the focus, so when you look at the end result, the like almost doubling that NPS overnight,
Mhm.
what were those one or two levers that really made that difference?
Yeah, it depends on so this is where there's a bit of subtlety. There's online versus offline
Yeah.
or in person.
Yeah.
Different variables in there. So one variable, while the variables are the same, the impact of those variables is different.
Yeah.
So what we were doing is when we were taking the Net Promoter Score, you have quantitative data.
Mm-hmm.
When you take and anyone who's, by the way, people with Net Promoter Score, everyone's seen one. It's one of those out of 10, would you recommend our product or service? And then the second question underneath that is, why did you say that?
Yeah.
And so there you've got qualitative data. And so we're able to class the qualitative data to pre-event, during the event, post-event.
Mm-hmm.
And then within the pre-event, these are the things that were evident. Within the
Yeah.
during the event, these were things that were evident. Post, these were things. And then we'd sort of say, well, okay, let's do one thing from the beginning. Let's do something, pre. Let's do one thing from on the day, and then let's do one thing on the post. And that way the team, rather than trying to focus on 1,000 different things that potentially might contribute,
Yeah.
it gave everyone focus on the one thing that brought the team together, brought the focus together.
That's
And I
powerful in
think,
itself.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what really brought it together. I know there's going to be a lot of people listening, and I'm going to ask some questions just around the people listening who think that they want to do a TED Talk. If we can go there first, and I want to come back to some of the data, but
Yeah.
because so many people have a TEDx talk on their bucket list, and I'm like, I'm not going to actually say out loud what I internally say with that. And a lot of people, obviously, in the world that you and I move in, it's definitely on their bucket list. So for those people who've got on their vision boards, got on their bucket list, have to do before I die,
Yeah.
what is it you want to say to them? Let's start there.
Yeah. Look, I think not every talk is a TED Talk, although many great talks are worth listening to.
Yeah.
And
Love that
so,
distinction.
I think, and then the other important element is that TED is a platform for ideas, not a platform to make a case. So,
Yeah.
for instance, how to get better at sales will never be a TEDx talk.
Because it's a process and knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about TED as a brand, the byline ideas worth spreading. It's not the idea;
Mhm.
it's the worth spreading. What's going to get
Mm.
someone to lean in and go, that is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up just talking at people. It's kind of like going to a dinner party
Mhm.
with complete strangers,
Yeah.
sitting next to that stranger and going, "Let me talk at you for the next 18 minutes. You'll be fascinated." And that just, you know.
That's so
So
many speeches, full stop,
this is
not
what
just
but
TEDx.
we can't afford to do this in speaking, and we particularly can't do it for video on TED because if they're not interested in the video, they just click next.
Click next, yeah, and you're gone.
And so, as much as it's known for its stage presentations, it's the video that adds the value.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so,
And this is one of the things that I do speak to clients who are talking about. It's like, yes, you have to get the stage, and then you have to be good enough to get the video and be on the platform. And it's not just about the stage, like actually think beyond that. And people come back to me and say, oh, I've thought about my outfit. I'm like, no, you need to actually go back to the coach and talk about your idea in your speech.
Mhm.
When it comes to the idea, what makes an idea TED worthy?
the way I simplify it is it's remarkable outside of your industry or area of expertise.
Ooh. Okay. Tell me
A
more.
complete stranger's got to look at this random video that someone sent them and go, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah.
And it's not unlike a newspaper. There's a whole bunch of articles on the front page. None of them are related to each other. And you've got to be able to read the first paragraph in both those articles or whichever number of articles you read, and it's got to make sense the moment you read that paragraph. Because if the headline's got your attention and the paragraph doesn't grab you, they're just not going to read the rest
Gone.
of the article.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We just had Jason Knight presenting at a conference, and he talked about you are a newspaper. You know, your headline, you need your sub paragraph, and then you actually get people to listen to you. So I love that you actually brought that through. When you're actually working with people and you've seen that there's this genesis of an idea that's probably worth sharing, because a lot of people that you work with may not have spoken before, as you mentioned when we first opened. When is it? How do you approach that? Question number one, because, you know, we're all used to working with people who want to speak and get on stage. And there may be a lot of people out there whose holdback is that they haven't actually spoken before. Where do you start with a process with someone who actually hasn't either A, considered or been just never done? Where do you start?
I think it's the caliber of the idea.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't, the remarkable outside of your industry expertise, that's the first thing. The second part, deeply related, if they can't articulate that idea in a single compelling sentence, it's not clear in their head. And the challenge with that is if it's not clear in your head, it can't be clear in the audience's head.
Yeah. You can't communicate it.
Exactly. And given that these talks are very, very short, there's no room for waffle.
No.
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 If you have, let's say, 10-minute talk and you waffle for, say, 5 minutes, that's half your talk.
You don't.
As opposed to a keynote where if you're on the stage for, say, 60 minutes, 45 minutes, 5 minutes, proportionally speaking, is immaterial.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have to work in, I'm going to say 20, 30-second blocks.
And is it the idea that each 20 or 30-second block, kind of like when you write a book, each chapter has to get the reader to read the next chapter? Each little 30-second block needs to get the person to the next 30-second block.
Yeah.
Is that kind of approach?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. And there's multiple ways you can do that, obviously. But yes, that's in summary, yes. I like to summarize it as the ability to say the right thing at the right time to the right person in the right way.
Yeah.
And each of those needs to be met in each of those segments.
Yeah. When it comes to TED Talk, I'm going to ask a couple of really technical questions and they just popped into my head. So the first thing is you are talking about 18 minutes. That is the original length. A lot of stages are doing faster ones now and shorter ones now. Where is Melbourne landing?
I haven't done an 18 for a long time. The max I'll give is probably 12 these days. So between, and we are going to get technical, but I'll try and keep it simple. 2019 and 2020, the abandon rate, for TED Talks halved.
Wow.
So you'd already gone from 18 to 9 at that point. And then from 2021 to 25 this year, it halved again.
So literally 4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes is as long as someone will be patient with you before they click next, which means you need to be able to bring your segments to really tight, really crisp, really compelling. That doesn't mean you get a 4.5 minute talk.
No.
It means you can't afford to be boring
in that first bit.
In that window.
Yeah. Wow. So there's actually a lot less tolerance as such. The other thing is the 18 minutes, the traditional TED Talk structure, there is a lot of, I guess, rules and boundaries around how we put a TED Talk together. How do you actually stick to that and allow people to flourish and be brilliant at the same time?
Yeah, I liken it to more guide rails and rules. So it's kind of like a traffic light. Everyone hopes that everyone agrees that what red means. We all agree red is red. And we all agree that white line down the middle, we decide we're going to drive on this side of the road, not the other side of the road. So they're guidelines. There's no rules to say how you get from A to B.
Yeah.
There's infinite creativity in getting from A to B, but we all got to agree that where the safety boundaries are, you've got to stick to them.
Yeah. Okay. And for anyone who's thinking they can just, because I've seen it even in some of the work that I did, as you know, we did some work around this a couple of years ago now. For anyone who thinks that they're just going to break the rules and do it their own way anyway, what do you say?
Look, I will always have a good, vigorous conversation. I'll always measure it against my data. And then if I have a case, we have a conversation.
Yeah. Love it.
But it's about being deliberate in your outcomes, not necessarily strict on how you deliver it.
Yeah. Love that. that distinction, deliberate and outcomes and not delivery, is really powerful. We've been touching on the ideas and things like that, and needs to be an idea we're spreading. It's not just your experience. It's not just your story. It's not just your process. It's not a Venn diagram.
No.
How have you coached yourself to actually be able to hear that hidden potential, that genesis of something great? Because you've been with Melbourne TEDx now, is it 2009, 2010?
Yeah, we started in 2009.
Yeah. So
16.
there would be, I'm thinking, thousands, if not tens of thousands of pitches and applications and conversations. How have you coached yourself to hear that hidden potential?
It still comes down to remarkable outside of industry or expertise. So
Yeah.
they might not be a great communicator. They might not have a clear sense of exactly where they want to take it. But there's always a nugget of, this is interesting. This has got some curiosity to it. And the way I test that, first of all, is the first principles. To what degree can they get it simple?
Yeah.
And they don't have to have it complete, but they've got to be going that direction.
Yeah.
But to answer your question in terms of what's going to make that pop, there's something called a second order consequence. It's a consequence of a consequence.
Okay.
In other words, how do people, in the speaking world, you might call that future pacing.
Yeah.
How do you get people to see what you see from their point of view, in their context, but with your language?
I love that. One of the things that we do talk about is, what is your vision of the world that is possible if that idea were true?
Yeah.
And then, and what you just said, so it's their experience and their lens, but in your language.
Yeah.
Is that the hardest part of pulling it together?
Yeah, I would say yes, because most people don't think about second order consequences as a general rule. We're taught maths, what's the next logical step? We're taught in business, what's the next logical step? When we might go into visioneering or mission, but they are less concrete.
Yeah.
Second order consequence is almost mathematical. So the example I like to give there is, I live in the city of Yarra, and 20 years ago, 50% of its revenue came from car parking fines. And so I said to them at the time, what happens when self-driving cars come along? And they get it, but I still don't think they've completely solved that problem. But the city of Melbourne, for instance, 34% of its parking, its footprint is car parking space. What happens when that land suddenly becomes available? What does it mean for land price and land tax?
Wow.
What does it mean for the city of Yarra, where I live, which is inner city Melbourne, which is basically next door to the city? If you didn't have to pay high prices for a box, but you could live in the country and sleep on the way in, why would you choose to live in inner city Melbourne? So what does it mean for public transport and traffic density? And if you think about the rural areas, hospitals, supermarkets, and sewerage all get impacted if suddenly in the next 10 years people go, I'm just going to go bush.
Yeah.
So, one small thing has such massive repercussions. And it's about helping people see the repercussions, the consequence of the consequence, that then becomes the important factor.
So when it comes to the consequence of the consequence, and thinking about all this experience over 15, 16 years now, what's the best example that you have of that? Or what's the example of that you love the most? The speech, the idea? Yeah. And I know I'm trying not to ask you about favorite children.
Yeah.
But what's the thing that really got your attention the first time you heard it and proved the second consequence?
Yeah. So one that sort of comes to mind was a fellow who came to me and said, look, first of all, he was a Nigerian gun runner. So he would ship money and passports between North Korea and Nigeria. So, quite an interesting premise to begin with. He goes, I tried to hand myself in and the police ignored me. I said, okay. And he goes, I want to tell people about that. I went, okay, so which bits do you think people will be interested in or relate to, or how would you explain this? And it got a bit complicated. And we came to the idea that, okay, how are we going to make this, sort of contextually relevant for our audience? So he was telling me about how he evades police, dogs and helicopters and all sorts of things. And, fascinating in its technical sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, it's just
Not a
lots
big
of
idea.
stories.
Big experience, big story,
Yeah,
not a big idea so much. Yeah.
sure. So I said to him, look, we need to have something that people can sort of follow through this, not just a whole bunch of nice little anecdotes. And I said, well, what happens? Tell me more about what happens in this scenario. He goes, well, I didn't mean to get into crime. I said, what happened? He goes, well, my parents got divorced. They didn't tell me. But I was at a private school, so they couldn't agree on who was going to pay the school fees. So the teacher just came up to me and said, look, your parents have stopped paying. You can't keep coming. And he wanted to stay in school, obviously. So what he would do is at night, he would rob cars to raise money.
Oh, wow.
And I said, and so what happens then? And he goes, well, eventually I just kind of ended up being more senior until I was in charge of the whole
Yeah.
thing. And so I said, well, what was that like? He said, you've got to understand that even within there's rules. I said, like what? He goes, well, you can't exploit the poor. You can't. What was the other thing? If you say you're going to do something, you've got to do it no matter what. And do not exploit. Do not exploit women, children, poor. If you say you're going to do something, you've got to do it. And what was the third one? Gosh, it's slipped my mind. And that was going to be the byline, and I can't remember. So how about we come back to because I'm not going to pay myself.
Absolutely.
But there were three things that really resonated, and I thought, that's it. That's what you have to do.
So how did that turn into the idea?
That's the bit, because it was those three things when they came together that suddenly everything could relate to. Let me just have a quick think about this for a second. Women and children. Okay, yes. If you say you're going to do something, you've got to do it. That was the first one.
Yeah.
So I said, well, imagine if the whole world worked like that. If you say you're going to do something and you've got to do it, if you didn't exploit women and children of the poor, and if someone asks for help, you've got to help them. Imagine if the whole world operated that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In fact, and so we decided to call the talk Respecting the Criminal Code, which is
wow, what a twist. Sorry, I'm just I'm blown away. I'm going to go and find it now.
Yeah. So, we found something that was universally relevant, that was sort of easy to recognize, but universally accepted. But in certain contexts, you wouldn't have expected it to come from there.
No, not at all.
And that's the second order consequence. That's the bit from the side that becomes remarkable. That's the worth spreading bit of the idea.
Yeah,
You've got to unpack that.
So how often do you have to unpack to that level?
Every single time.
Tell me more about that.
Because you've got to pressure test an idea.
Yeah, okay.
Because if it doesn't stand up to scrutiny in our discussions, there's going to be someone who's more qualified or more experienced or more knowledgeable who's going to pick a hole in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be stricter than my audience.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know as much about that concept or idea as that audience. And in many cases, a lot of the time, I could probably do their talk.
Mm. Is that because the way that you unpack it with them, then shape it, then coach? Because you actually coach them, don't you?
I do. For the ones who want to be coached, not everyone wants to be or needs to be coached. Yeah. For the people, I always offer, and X percentage will accept, depending on the year, be more or less. And then we go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We literally go down to senses and words and tone and dynamic. And we literally pick the cadence of everything. We pick the words, we pick the moment building, because it's not about the content, it's about the meaning they get from the content.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we've got to find a way that make each word count and make each moment land. And it's not just going, then I did this, I know this, here's an interesting stat. Because then it's just fact sharing. And fact sharing, you can do it in an email, you can do it on a website.
Yeah. Actually, that's probably a hot tip for everyone to take away. If you can do it on an email or on a website, you're not worthy of a TED stage.
Yeah, yes, yes, probably fair.